Story 2, When Consultants Attack. If you read any news story on cybersecurity, you will see one refrain. Run and hide. There's a security talent shortage. Here's the thing. That is somewhat true, but not in the way they mean it, or in the way many people think. There is no shortage of bodies to try to do the job, but they are correct that there is a lack of talent. There's a story my old boss told me once that stuck with me through the years. A quick disclaimer, he was a notorious liar and probably needed a lot of therapy. But he had at least this one good story. It goes like this. He was on a flight when he saw a kid sitting beside him reading what looked like an Oracle manual. He claims the kid told him that his company, giant consultancy at the time, hired him out of college, threw him on a plane the same day, and though he had no experience with Oracle, gave him the manual so he'd know what I'm doing by the time he landed. I was around 24 or so, and this was his way of encouraging me to work over Thanksgiving weekend to learn Oracle EMC and have a fully functional web application up and running by Tuesday. The actual moral is that most consultants and their companies are full of crap. And yes, I was a consultant. Here's how my first day at that very same job went. I was hired as a systems administrator, though I knew nothing about systems administration if the system started with anything but Linux. I was learning web development, such as it was in the 90s, and doing the admin thing for about 2 hours. The company offered 24x7 support for things, but of course didn't have staff for it, so anytime the phone rang, you picked it up and tried to help. One of their biggest products at the time was IBM's Lotus Notes. Prior to starting there, I had never heard of it. I had really never heard of it on day one. This phone call was from one of their biggest clients who needed help with their Lotus Notes installation. Yay, me! I answered the call and took notes as I didn't want to appear as useless as I was going to be, all the while frantically Googling, wait, scratch that, Yahooing since Google didn't exist at this point. I finally figured out what Lotus Notes Domino was and was still not going to be able to solve their problem. I politely told them I would have to consult with our notes consultant. I didn't know if we had one, but you know. And get back to them. Our notes consultant was, as it turns out, at another client, full-time for months. Around an hour later, the client called my boss, looking for a resolution! Of course, I didn't have one because, well, Notes was obscure even back then, so the internet was of no help. My boss came storming to my desk, and please remember, this was the first time I'd seen the guy since he hired me. Get your ass over there! I hired you to administer a system. Notes is a system! I was a kid. I had a pretty lousy attitude then, admittedly, but I wasn't going to make the boss mad on my first day. That's what the second day was for, so I went. The client was nice enough. He showed me to their server room, gave me the root login, and left. Fortunately, they were running Notes on Unix, which, as the young lady in Jurassic Park said, I know this. One of their admins had severely messed up permissions during some updates the day before, which they swore they did not do. I quickly fixed the permissions and restarted Notes, and they were back in business. I looked like a hero, and honestly, I felt pretty good about myself. This was the worst mistake I could have ever made. During the following weeks, I was given almost every assignment the guy could think of, and I kept doing well despite having no idea what I was doing on most of it. There was a lot of at least partially educated guessing and even more luck. This client was a large firm and it was a big deal. The boss sent an inexperienced kid with no direct knowledge of anything to solve their emergency downtime issue. The fact that I did it is irrelevant here. I should have been shadowing someone. I would have even settled for at least having heard of Notes before. During those weeks, I was sent all over the place doing all sorts of things I never heard of, and I really enjoyed it. But I had no business doing it. What's the point of all this? As I've learned throughout the years, my boss was no different. Every consultancy I've run across does the same thing. I've worked with consultants who didn't know how to log into a Linux prompt and were sent out the door to fix a critical Linux system. I've worked with others who had never heard of the product they were working on but were expected to correct the problem. I always sympathized with them because I was there, but none of us should have ever been there. I've been in situations where I had no choice but to put someone in that same position, but at least I felt terrible about it. There has to be a better way, but I'm unsure if anyone has found it. The story's moral is to check your consultant's credentials. Do not take the consultancy's word for it. Ask how long they've been there and what their experience is with your particular issue. Ask to speak to whomever they were planning to send out. Watch out for the other consultancy trick. They'll put a senior person on the phone with you and then send a junior person with no experience. You'll likely never 100% avoid the consultant attack, but at least try. Maybe if enough folks try, then the practice will change.